women peasants,
mujeres campesinas,
transformation,
agroecológicas,
Ernährungssouveränität,
Mutter Natur,
la organización y la lucha colectiva,
sharing, revolution,
ihr sorgt für unser Essen.
autonomie,
feminism, l'inclusivité, care, solidarity and equality.
Soil Sisters towards feminist agroecological futures in Europe.
A Swift Project podcast.
We're kicking off our podcast Story of the Laurel Women, part of the Swift Project podcast series. Stay with us. Daphne was a Greek dryad, or tree spirit, and daughter of Panaus, the river god. According to mythology, Apollo, the god of hunting, music and poetry, offended Eros, the god of love, by mocking his archery skills. Eros retaliated by shooting 2 arrows. One hit Apollo and filled him with insatiable lust for Daphne. The other hit Daphne and filled her with abhorrence for all things romantic. Apollo pursued Daphne, and when she was tired of running, she called for help to her father, who turned her into a laurel tree. Apollo adorned himself with laurel leaves and called it his special symbol, which explains why the laurel tree is associated with the god Apollo in Greek myth. The place I'll talk about in this podcast is deeply intertwined with mythology. The famous mythological figure Medea was born and raised here. She studied medicine and healing with herbs, knowledge that, at the time, was often labelled as witchcraft when practiced by women. That's why Medea was called a sorceress. Her descendants still live in the ancient land of Colchis in Bzvani and the surrounding villages. Here, women have passed down the skills of healing, midwifery, cooking and caregiving for generations. They guide oxen in the fields, harvest crops, prepare feasts, and deliver babies before an ambulance arrives. When someone dies, they prepare the body for burial. They hold life and death in their hands, just like Medea. Most of them married young, often without love or choice. They learned about menstruation, childbirth, and womanhood on their own, took over their mother-in-law's duties and raised children without getting the chance to study. They grew up dealing with both love and hardship. Sometimes the wise and powerful face of Medea awakened in them, but more often they lived the fate of Daphne, humiliated and hurt by their husbands, feeling abandoned, silently hoping that nature might protect them, turn them into a tree, a bush, or a star. In time, they found their own paths and became their true selves. Today we're telling the story of some of the Georgian women whose bodies carry the scent of laurel. They feel the soul of this mythical plant and consider it a family member. The woman embodied in the tree, Daphne, seems to protect these women, and she lightens the burden of their daily work. I was born in Georgia, a country located in the Caucasus region between Eastern Europe and Western Asia. I used to spend my summer holidays in the village of Bzvani in the Imereti region. The first thing I feel when I think about this village is the sharp, aromatic and spicy scent of the laurel. In spring and late autumn, I would see the women in my village in the hills, gathering laurel in the heat and cold, tirelessly working to ensure that they had a small income. Small, yet the money earned through this work was theirs. Having their own income meant independence. Independence from their husbands, children, mothers-in-law, fathers-in-law and the large family circle, along with the feeling of having earned money on their own terms. During the Soviet Union era, laurel was planted, harvested collectively and delivered to factories. At that time, collective work was compulsory, and the income from the harvest was divided equally among the inhabitants of the village. The main source of income for Bzvani was Laurel. When the Soviet Union dissolved, the factories closed, leaving people without the ability to produce. Years passed, and the young brides became adult women with few options for work in the village. Through the internet, they gathered information about possibilities for work in Europe and embarked on the difficult and uncertain path of migrant life. In Europe, they encountered other Georgian women who had already paved the way. They helped each other find jobs in Greece, Italy, and Spain, usually as carers for older persons or for young children. These women transferred their longing for their own children and parents into the homes of others. Some were only able to visit the graves of their own parents who had passed away years later when they returned to their homeland. Their children, now grown, struggled to remember them. In this way, the hardworking women in the village split into two groups. One group stayed and adapted to the post-Soviet life by continuing to harvest laurel, while the other group chose to leave for foreign lands. They left behind young or teenage children with their mothers-in-law and husbands and found their survival in taking care of other people's young children or elderly relatives abroad. Their daily routine of caretaking and a life confined within four walls gains colour through nightly video calls with the women who remain in the village. The women who stay in the village often build gardens near their homes where they grow enough vegetables and herbs for the entire family. Laurel and the garden, these are their two spaces which even the main man of the family cannot touch. These are sacred places, like temples. Here, the village woman is free with herself and her income. After the collapse of the Soviet era, Laurel, left to its own devices, turned into tangled, overgrown bushes, neglected and untouched. Gradually, the women breathed life back into them. They plucked every new bud and fresh leaf from the laurel, and in return, the laurel began to bloom again, flourish, and bear fruit twice a year, bringing joy to the hearts of the women. And so began the joint adventure of the women and the laurel. The women here know a little about politics and state organisation, but since most of them only remember the collapsed system after the fall of the Soviet Union, rather than the organised healthcare, education and economic systems that prevailed when the Union was working as a whole, it is less clear to them what the model of a state should be. They understand examples of other lifestyles and political systems from those who have lived elsewhere. This is exactly the story of Malona, who left the village and went abroad, among the many women who left their country, their home, their children, their husbands and their livestock to work in Greece. There she has been caring for an elderly couple for a year, only having Sundays off. For the remaining 6 days she stays at home, taking care of the elderly without leaving. She has no insurance, no rights, and lives there illegally, which is why she cannot walk freely on the streets. On Sundays, she meets other Georgian women in a trusted and safe place where they share their worries, call their children and husbands, laugh, show each other clothes bought at the cheap market, and spend the day until they meet again the following week. Malona endures the confinement within four walls and the foreign environment, driven by a clear goal. She wants to fund her husband's heart surgery and give her child a better life.
I left abroad because of family circumstances. There was no income anymore. When we used to collect laurel, we would gather and earn some money. But then the factory closed, the government changed, and we couldn't work in a way that would allow us to survive. If the conditions are created, yeah, we will definitely return. I will return for sure. My land is far more precious to me than anything else. The Greek language was the hardest part for me. I can't get used to it. It's difficult. Hardship has taken its toll on me.
Since the 1990s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, women began to leave Georgia systematically. With the hope that they will return in 2 or 3 years, many of them ended up spending 15 or 20 years abroad. When they eventually returned to their homeland, they could no longer recognize their own children. The little children they had left behind with their mothers-in-law or husbands were now married, their homes remodeled with the money sent back, but their husbands had aged and their own health had deteriorated. They returned to a changed economic and social life in Georgia, which had shifted dramatically, and they were trying to find their footing. However, they realized that the years lost cannot be compensated. Malona too thinks that she will save enough money and return to her village, her family, and the Laurel, which was her only source of income. For now, it is just a dream, because once someone dares to leave, it is hard for them to come back. Unlike Malona, Marina could not leave her village, her husband and children. Although she married off both of her sons and is now raising 2 grandchildren, she couldn't leave her eldest deceased son's grave. So she makes do with the modest income provided by the Laurel. In November, the laurel bushes on the village hills begin to bloom, and it becomes time to collect it. The process of sprouting new shoots and young leaves continues until May. The mythological laurel awakens. The women wake up early in the morning and head up to the hills from their homes to gather their share of fresh laurel branches. Where do they take the collected laurel? Since I couldn't visit the village during this period, I recorded Marina's answer over the phone, and she provides the answers to these questions. I asked Marina to tell us about a day in their life in the abandoned house.
I have been living in Bzvani for 31 years, and Daphne's story started when I got married and moved to this village 31 years ago. Due to the challenges we faced, Laurel has become our main source of income, providing the best financial support for our family during this time. The laurel we collect and the land where it grows belong to the state. Currently, this hill is mostly abandoned, and we gather the laurel collectively from there. We are all from Bzvani, and as villagers, we share the laurel harvest in a friendly and cooperative manner. This idea was introduced to us by Mr. Georgian, a wonderful person who refers to this laurel and has been a great support. We pray for him 24 hours a day. He owns a laurel shop and buys the laurel from us, ensuring we are paid. It was also his idea to purchase an abandoned house and turn it into a source of income for us. Starting from 9 in the morning, we would head to the abandoned house to collect laurels. There was no set time limit. The earlier we arrived, the more laurels we would gather. Sometimes we stayed until 5 p.m. Despite the cold and hunger, we were a great team working together, and we have fond memories of our time there. We would cook dinner together in the fireplace, sometimes roasting goat or preparing beans. Everyone contributed food from home in small amounts. At lunchtime, we'd gather, share drinks, and say prayers. It was a time of togetherness and warmth despite the challenges. In my opinion, collectivity is all about teamwork, when we all come together to work. It doesn't matter if we are young or old, we all contribute with great love. We honor our mothers and grandmothers, placing them in their rightful places. This spirit of love and unity is what collective work means to me.
These women have formed an informal cooperative. In Georgia, as in other former Soviet countries, terms like kokots, cooperative, and collective farm are viewed negatively, perhaps because they represent a form of coerced and largely undervalued labour. This means that the women are happy to remain an informal collective. Marina confirms this. This summer, the women of the village received news that a Laurel factory will open in the abandoned house. This was a happy piece of news for them, as it meant an increase in their income. The change might mean a more structured and regimented daily routine, but they are willing to put up with this in order to remain close to their families. Marina and many other women involved in this work talk about the inevitability of minimal income. They hope that with the opening of the new factory, young people who left the village for the city might return and earn their livelihood on their own land. I asked Marina to record herself working with other women while collecting laurel for the day. We can hear the voices of Marina, Maya, Lali, and Rita in these recordings. They joke among themselves. Instead of calling each other on the phone, they loudly call out to one another.
Maya! Lali! Tot khali khan! Khwar mokti! Daphne!
Maya, how are you? Lali, are you alive? Are you dead or what? Everyone's gone to the Laurel. What would we do without the Laurel? Why did you decide to start collecting laurel? To earn money for food. What do you think about politics? We don't understand politics, we just try to earn our living and take care of ourselves. Isn't it beautiful how the laurel has grown? Let's not be lazy, let's gather as much as we can. Let's sing a song too.
Lali, hey, erti simghera, chiti guri di ma Marina vda. Hey, Maya, how ranuni? Yitkhas ka gawas.
Until the true nature of the collective, job opportunities and social conditions improve in the country, many more women will continue to leave their families and migrate abroad to care for other people's children. Meanwhile, those who remain behind in the village will continue to rely on nature, as they always have. These women, weary, many of them mothers of many children, bereaved, married without love, sheltered by the laurel, distant from everything, yet at the center of everything. These are the women of the laurel. The mythological figure Daphne gazes down upon the village women, and twice a year she divides her body among them, to bloom again, once more from the beginning. This program was written and directed by Mari Gaprindashvili based on her own story. She would like to extend her heartfelt thanks to the SWIFT project team, Joanna Burke-Martignoni and Larissa da Silva Araujo, whose voices brought the podcast to life, Stephanie Chiron, Jan Burke-Satur, Kubra Özgul and Yagmur Tanilts for their care and dedication during the editing process, the talented Georgian artists who lent their voices in song, and the group Joli Môme, who performed L'Hymne des Femmes, and the incredible women of Bzvani village, whose stories and spirit inspired it all. The Soil Sisters podcast has been made possible with financing from the European Commission and the Swiss State Secretariat for Education, Research and Innovation. Thank you for listening to us and stay tuned. If you're interested in learning more about the SWIFT project, please go to www.swiftproject.eu.